first, let's start off with your web page error. So here's a typical use case. You have a customer or a tester, end user, reports an error that they saw on the screen. They're basically giving you very little information other than it didn't do what it was supposed to do. Well, now you've got to quickly get back and understand the root cause with that limited amount of data. Well, the problem is you can't reproduce it. It's working on your machine. Meanwhile, the clock is ticking. Your release is getting delayed. So let's have a look at that example. So what I'm going to do here is just start off by actually opening up and starting up Eclipse. And I'll just make sure we're going to jump in right into Eclipse here and make sure that I haven't got any of these.
And Jonathan, let's kind of go through some of this in line. We get asked before, do I have to use Eclipse?
No, you do not. This is something that you can run directly on your application server, in test, in automation, in production. What I'm going to show is actually jumping back to the code in Eclipse, so I've got that environment set up. But we're going to walk through some examples that could be running anywhere in your infrastructure. Okay. So, like I said, this is something called Daffodil. It's a Salesforce-like application written in Java, and it happens to have quite a few components, lots of database I/O, and it happens to, perform some of the tasks that you might expect in terms of tracking accounts and leads and marketing campaigns and tasks. And so, let's have a look at one example of an issue here. If I wanted to go and add an action to a particular account, well, call the customer, add this guy in. So here's an example of something where we have an action that a user wants to do, and boom, I've got this problem. It says error adding action. So if I'm the end user, I'm pretty upset right now. I don't understand why that happened, and maybe there's some log files in the back end, what have you. But if I'm the end user, I'm just going to basically file a defect or a trouble ticket or call support and say, I've got this error on my screen. Well, now that we have this recording technology in the background, we're able to actually tag this problem using a marker, action error. And so I can actually, with a simple click of a mouse as an end user, indicate exactly that something bad happened. And I've got a screenshot of that captured here as well. So now that I've got that problem captured, my developer is going to have everything they need to get back to this problem and really understand it well. So let's look at that workflow. So I'm going to log out, and we'll move on here to trying to understand this problem. So we had a user, ran through the application, encountered a problem. What they did was they indicated that a problem happened by adding a marker, and now I'm going to go and look at exactly what has been captured. So for those of you that are familiar with this technology, you understand or you've seen before that this recording that's being made in the background in the application server, in this case it's Tomcat, has been saved to the disk and uploaded, or is uploading now, to our central repository called the Replay Director server, where the actual recordings are stored. And so just as a refresh, I'll log out of here. So this is my login screen. So if I'm going to go ahead and try to understand this problem, I know that a marker has been dropped. I can log in and actually start to look at what's been captured in those recordings. And so if I click over to the Recordings tab, I can see, well, we've got this recording that's currently being processed and uploaded. And if I click through, I can actually see what my user actually clicked on as they navigated through the application. And if I go back a moment to my recordings, I can actually see, well, here is exactly what that user indicated as the problem. Here's my add action error, and there's the screenshot. So all of that has already been captured for me, and I know that as a developer, this problem has been caught, has been recorded, and I can jump back to the root cause. So right now, I have the ability to open up a defect, see this problem if it's been attached to the defect or a link has been included, and I can open up Eclipse and actually have a look at this. So we have our marker, which tagged the exact root cause of the problem. We have our recording that captured it. And if I now flip back to Eclipse, and I'll switch to the Java EE perspective, I can actually see the recordings that have been made. So here's a recording of the problem we just encountered. I can double-click into that and actually see all the user sessions from where they logged in. And if I double-click deeper, I can actually see what they actually accessed in my application. We can see all the URLs that the user accessed. In this case, the user logged in and they navigated through the application for about a minute and a half, and they experienced a problem somewhere here. But if I look at these status codes, these are the HTTP response codes, I don't see a problem here. So that's not terribly helpful. I know that the problem looked like it happened while they were adding an action, and I can see a couple of requests to the add action URL, and I can actually click on that if I want and have a look at the payload. So here's the actual HTTP request that went into my application from the browser, in this case to the add action URL, the JSP page here. So now let's flip over to the log. So I want to really understand what happened in this application. What I can do is well, here are all the log messages that were output from my application during this recording. And now this recording is actually still running in the background, so I'm going to actually go ahead and close that guy down. Let's stop that server. So here I actually have the ability to see all the log messages that were output from my application server while that recording was being made, and we can see that there were quite a few info level log messages, and then here's an actual error message indicating that we had an error adding the action. So luckily there's something in the log that pertains to this particular error. So that's helpful. I know now that I can use that to understand the problem better. So what I'm going to do, and this is where we're going to take a step further than you can without this technology, because I have this software recorded, I can actually put a breakpoint on this log message, and I'm going to tell it to actually replay to the point in the code where that problem happened. So as I replay, as you recall, every line of code that was executed when this recording was made is also being executed as I play it back. And we're going to walk through and actually see what the user clicked on, what was on their screen in the browser when they were interacting with the application, and ultimately what happened when they got to that point in the application where they saw the error on the screen. So we'll walk through this now, and we'll see exactly where this issue is. As we go back to the tasks, we see that we're about to add a task. Now what I'm showing you as a developer, if I don't want to see this, if I just want to go straight to the problem, I don't have to watch this playback. I can just say, show me the code where the problem happened. Here we're adding an action, and I can see exactly where we are. So now what I've done is I've broken in the debugger. I can actually see where we are in the source code. And if I look at this, I can see all my threads running. Here are my 30 threads. So this is a live running application, of course. And we can see that we're throwing an error. If I look at my variables, we can see the message is error adding action. So let's actually go up the stack and have a look at that. We can see here's where we are in the code. So it looks like we've got some logic here about what message to put on the screen. It looks like it's checking the message type. And if I go ahead and look at my variables in memory, I can see that I've got message check is equal to null. And in the code, we're checking for that and treating that as an error. Well, as it turns out, this is not right. This should probably be not equal to null, because what we really want to see is if it's null, then that's actually an indication of a problem. So I can make that change. But this is live, right? So I can actually continue to step through this code, really understand what happened, set other normal, regular breakpoints. But what I've been able to do in just about 30 seconds is get back to this line of code that was responsible for this error, without having to set up my database, without having to walk through the steps to reproduce the problem. All I had to do was click play, and it brought me right back to this point with nothing more than a marker and the log message at this point. So, Grover, I think you can see we're really accelerating people through this type of problem where strange things appear on the screen.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. And I think that one thing that we get a lot with our regular sessions, which you'd like to point out here, is there are also use cases that can deal with complex bugs and reproducing bugs, even to verify them, that have nothing to do with even looking at source code. They just have to do, if you've got a remote team somewhere and their job is to validate the errors, they can run this without anything except the JVM on their machine. They can replay the application, don't have to have the database, and they can validate, hey, that error did occur. It occurred at this timestamp in the run life, and they can add a few more details into the log messages, and then you can, pass it back over to the debug team. So yeah, there are use cases in addition to that. If you've just joined us, you're listening to Jonathan Lindo. He's the founder, vice president of technology and product here at Replay Solutions, and we're working through the advanced topics.